Good afternoon and welcome to this feature interview where we interview experts and thought leaders from different fields to take a deeper dive into the different aspects from the sustainability climate change agenda. In this week, we're going to be discussing on environmental, social governance aspects from organizations, the so-called ESG acronym that's been lately making it to many headlines across the media. And I'd like to welcome for this week our guest interviewee, Tatiana Antonelli Abella, the founder and managing director of Goumbook, a social enterprise established in 2009, which is dedicated to raising awareness among local communities on sustainability and green living. Tatiana, I'd like to welcome you to this interview, and I'd like also to kick off the interview by asking you what is your story working on the sustainability aspects, and what is your the work that you do at the Goumbook, if I spell it well, Goumbook?
It's perfect. Thank you very much, Nacho. It's a pleasure to be here today with you. So yes, Goumbook, you pronounced it well, but it can be pronounced in many ways. So how did I start? I started as a regular citizen, someone who was just a bit concerned about what's going on around me, and this was back in 2008. I just had 2 young children, moved to the UAE, and somehow I started asking myself a few questions. And I studied architecture and specifically urban planning, and so seeing new cities coming up was very exciting. But at the same time, I could see how some aspects were lacking behind, specifically, I would say water treatment, waste management. There was a lot, and still now, of energy consumption around, and very little concern from the general population. And so it was more of a research project at the beginning, understanding what I could avoid in my life to lower the exposure of toxic chemicals, how I could recycle, what I could do with my children, how I could feed them with organic products and produce. Was it available? Was it not available? And somehow I realized that something was actually available. There was a reality, a tiny reality surrounding at that time something called going green. Today we talk about sustainability, ESG, but I would say in 2008 it was really about going green. There was a small reality, but the majority of people here were less concerned. And the main, I would say, recurrent answer I would get was, well, we're not from here. This is not our country. This is not our home. When I go back home, I will recycle, I would save water, I would save energy. But somehow the majority of population here being, transient and expats, it was, I think that's where the challenge, but also the opportunity was, whereby we needed to create a connection with people living in the UAE, even for just a couple of years, but understanding that whatever we do here or anywhere in the world has a global impact. And somehow we needed also to connect more with the local environment. And this is how Goumbook started, really, to create that connection. The name itself wants to be the first connection. The Goum is the local tribe, the Bedouins family traveling around the desert. And the Bedouins used to have a very sustainable way of life. They were sharing all the resources, never wasting, living as communities, and living in harmony with nature, with whatever nature could provide. They would, use it and somehow, but not abuse it. And this is what we do today, right? We don't live in harmony with nature anymore. We don't live anymore as communities. We abuse of nature. And somehow it was a call to action to go back to what it was before here, and understanding how to connect with the local environment. And we started building different campaigns. The first campaign was to plant trees in the desert. It was the Give a Gaff. And by planting trees, we were able to take people out in the desert, make them understand that it's actually a beautiful ecosystem, very much alive. We actually call it the living desert, and somehow making and giving importance to indigenous species. Why should we plant gaff trees and acacias instead of palm trees and other tropical trees that are imported? Well, because the indigenous trees need a few liters of water a day when we compare to, a palm tree that needs between 150 to 300 liters a day. So how are we greening our cities here in the desert? Question number one. Question number two is how water is produced here through desalination. Huge impact in terms of CO2 emissions, energy need, and at the same time, an impact on the marine environment. So by planting a tree, we were able actually to explain and tell the story of nature here and the ecosystem for people to go back to their offices or to their homes and have, you know, a different mindset, understanding what nature means here and how they could make a difference. So this is how it started. And then we launched throughout the years, different campaigns related to food security, to plastic pollution, air quality. So slowly, and things have changed, thankfully. And now we talk about sustainability, sustainable development, ESG. So we come a long way.
Yeah, certainly. You can see actually the greater focus that there's been having on sustainability here in the region from a government perspective, with all these visions from government visions from the Gulf countries, including sustainability targets and trying to become net zero in some years from now, a few decades from now. And also from in the private sector, we've seen like ESG sustainability aspects are having a greater consideration among the private sector business communities all across the globe. And I'd like to ask, from your perspective, you've been working here on sustainability aspects since 2009. What's been your perspective? How you assess the evolution on this focus on sustainability from companies in the UAE and the Middle East?
There's been an evolution for sure. There's much more interest nowadays compared to 10 years ago. I would say, as I mentioned earlier, before we were talking about going green within the corporate world, it was about CSR, corporate social responsibility. And usually that role was somehow given to the marketing departments or HR departments to, you know, engage with their employees, do some volunteering, but there was no strategy behind it. It was not linked to a sustainable or sustainability strategy. This has evolved. So now finally we have more and more companies who really look at sustainability as a strategic decision and part of their business, not as something added on the side. They understand the value. We have also two scenarios. We have local companies, and then we have multinationals that have their headquarters for the Middle East here in Dubai, for example. So it was interesting to see years ago where multinationals back in their own countries were actually already driving sustainability within their companies, and they had a strategy, but they were not really doing much here. And now this is changing from a multinational point of view. Local companies are moving, I would say, slower. There's been a big change since the government has been putting more focus on sustainability, on the SDGs. I mean, we have also to think that the UAE has been the first country in the Middle East to actually sign the Paris Agreement, which was incredible already. They have an SDG office here in Dubai from a federal point of view to help and sustain all businesses in the UAE. So a lot is happening. I think it's not in the front row. We don't hear enough still, but things are evolving and companies are more and more interested. Now, I think the biggest issue is to not fall into the trap of greenwashing and using ESG as, you know, a marketing tool or a look good tool whereby, okay, we have an ESG strategy, we have a plan, we report, but then there's no transparency. We don't really see what's going on. There are no proper investments made. There's zero transparency. It also depends on who does the reporting, right? These things are not so far aligned between the different companies. And as I said, there's a huge risk of greenwashing and ESG or sustainability being used for just communication. There is also very little knowledge of what sustainability really is. And till today, when we meet some companies, we have the leadership or the CEOs and the management not understanding what the SDGs are, the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is a symptom that still there is not enough information out there. There is not enough push. It would be interesting to see, for example, the licensing bodies here being more proactive. And somehow when you have companies who either open a new license or renew their license, it would be good for these licensing bodies to maybe start asking, what are you doing in terms of sustainability? Are you aligned to the SDGs? Are you reporting? Do you have an ESG framework? It would be good to see this becoming more regular. And again, it's always about, you know, also regulation and policies, and to make sure that everyone is a bit more transparent and following the proper channels, I would say.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the question of ESG sustainability actions falling into this PR umbrella, let's say, and seems like nowadays this greenwashing is sort of backfiring in some cases. And I'd like to ask you also from how would you say are different ways of avoiding falling into these greenwashing umbrella, and which are the roles, for example, of reporting and having common standards on with regards to ESG and sustainability aspects?
So I think there are two aspects to this question. The first one is from a company point of view. To avoid falling into the trap, I think it's really about how they've designed their sustainability strategy. Is this really something embedded into the business, or is this something they have on the side? The first maybe trap, but I don't want to call it trap, but it's the challenge that makes you understand how much sustainability is embedded within your company, is when there is a crisis. Are you going to cut the budget on sustainability as a first thing? So if you do cut it, it means it's not important to you and it's not embedded into your business strategy. If during a crisis you understand that actually your sustainability strategy is what is going to need reinforcement and more investment, that's when it's really part of your business. And you don't even need to communicate about it. It's really something that your business depends on. So that I would say from a business point of view, it's really about having this coming from the top. It cannot be someone driving it from the HR department or from, I don't know, any kind of other department by passion. Because what happens if that person changes and goes to another company? All the efforts are gone lost. So it really needs to be embedded into the business. From the consumer point of view, and I think this is an important point, as individuals, we need to be more aware, and we need to make sure that we cannot be fooled easily. And this is always about awareness and education, and somehow making an extra effort to learn about sustainability. And it's doable, it's possible, it's accessible. Even the United Nations have a lot of different resources. They have a website on SDGs that explain very well what the Sustainable Development Goals are. You can really learn a lot by just reading. And you can read about different topics, down to what food security is, or even a topic so simple such as, actually it's not simple, it's complicated, like plastic pollution, right? This is the typical example where we are taking individuals for a ride when we tell them that, oh, okay, this new product, this new shirt or t-shirt has been made out of recycled trash from the oceans. It gives immediately to the consumer that sense of reward, you know, feel good, I'm buying something that is made out of ocean trash. Where at the end of the day, I need to go beyond that. I need to understand what happens when the t-shirt is old or is broken or I don't need it anymore. Is this part of a larger scheme?
We're seeing actually some firms benefiting from taking these sort of actions and advertising it, from fashion to other different industries too.
Absolutely. And so I think that's where the consumers need to point fingers and need to demand for more. So, okay, great, you're doing something out of ocean trash, but maybe not a t-shirt. Let's make something that lasts longer and then that is designed to fulfill a circular economy loop, whereby that shoe, I can bring it back to the shop, to the store, and they will again reuse it and make something out of it. So I think here, when you talk about sustainability to people, the first thing they think is tree planting and doing a cleanup and not using plastic straws, okay? Because there's been so much awareness about this. So again, yes, it's great to plant trees, it's great to do a beach cleanup, but these are one-time actions. We need to think about our behavior. What can I do on a daily basis that will have an impact? And these are simple things. So instead of recycling, why don't you instead stop, for example, purchasing plastic bottled water? Just put a filter and drink tap water, filter tap water, and you will reduce thousands of bottles from going to landfill. You can start buying local produce instead of things that have been imported from very far away, and try to really follow seasonal foods and things that are produced locally. That will reduce tremendously the carbon footprint. You can start eating less meat, for example, and better meat. I'm not saying we should all go vegan, but definitely reducing the amount of meat we consume has an impact. And even if it's just once a week as a whole family, that's great. So little things that we can do. And then the products we choose them better, research the companies, understanding what are their values, what are they doing. And it's not only about environment or recycling. Sustainability is also about people. It's about social. It's about living really in harmony, making sure that businesses thrive, because we need businesses to thrive. We need profitability, but a good one, a healthy one. And we need people with jobs. We need people healthy that have access to healthcare. We need equality for everyone. There's a lot of different things related to sustainability. And unfortunately, we still don't know enough about this. It should be embedded into schools. Children should learn about sustainability. They should understand what it is, what the Sustainable Development Goals are, what are the challenges, and what are the solutions. Why don't we bring startups and new solutions to schools and talk to the children, talking about their products and their solutions and their new technologies. And also another problem is that we think that technology is going to save the world. Well, definitely it's going to help. But we also need to look back at nature and nature-based solution. And I think we need to really balance these two things. Like innovation is very important, but also let's not forget things that were done 200-300 years ago that worked perfectly, and we could still use them today, specifically in agriculture, for example.
Certainly. And also, being here in the Middle East, of course, we're having many of the top oil exporting countries, some of the largest oil and gas firms. How can these companies, how can the oil and gas sector, in which ways can it be more involved with the ESG and coming up with ESG frameworks and becoming eventually more sustainable within their operations?
This is a very good question, because at the end of the day, we need to understand and be realistic that there are some industries that are here to stay for another 10, 20 years. We cannot immediately just cancel them from the face of the earth. One of them is the oil and gas. Then a derivative is transportation, mobility, cars. Yes, we do have more and more electric cars, but still, we need energy. We need to understand how to better produce this energy, I think, as a first thing. So here I can see, I've seen very interesting steps being taken into trying to decarbonize whatever can be decarbonized, trying to work on a sustainability as a whole. So as I said before, not only about the environmental impact, but also about the social impact and respecting nature. So what we should expect from these bad guys is for them to do what they do in the best way possible as a first thing. But we cannot expect that to just point fingers and that tomorrow they're going to disappear. This is not possible. So I think we just need to lower our consumption as much as possible, use public transportation as much as possible. Definitely the way we live on a daily basis has an impact. But then we're going to have to hit that threshold whereby that petrol, that certain amount of petrol and gas will still need to be produced. And so it needs to be produced in the best way possible, with less harmful consequences, I would say, on the environment. How am I also dealing with my employees as a company? Socially, what am I doing? It's a balance. It's very hard today to talk about this today on a black and white vision. We had a very interesting event 3-4 weeks ago. It was an ESG event whereby we also invited as a panelist the head of sustainability for Etihad Airways. And it was very interesting to understand how, as an airline, they were, really working hard towards reducing their impact. And what she said was, it was an honest conversation about sustainability and the future, is that this is an industry that is here to stay, and people want to travel and need to travel as well. So how can we make sure that this is done in the best way possible? This is the solution for now. Hopefully, this will slowly decrease, and we're going to have other solutions more into renewable energies.
Certainly, and as you said, like these bad guys, they need to be part of the conversation too, and they need to have a seat on the table. At the end of the day, we're depending on oil yet. It's still a big part of our energy consumption, and as you said, the aviation industry is here to stay. We had, for instance, some years ago, some proposals of people starting to take more the trains, taking ships, but depending for some distance, of course, it's very hard to substitute the plane for other transport methods. I'd like to jump into other aspects of, get back to your work at Goumbook, as you're working on various grassroots projects involving with different types of organizations, from schools, public sector. I'd like to ask, what are the common challenges at the time of trying to attract support for this sort of programs?
I think at the beginning it was definitely more challenging when we started Goumbook, because who was Goumbook, 10-13 years ago, and to go out there and start asking for funds and support was more complicated. Nowadays, we're lucky, we've built a reputation, and we're really committed to make a difference. And I think this is something that our partners and our clients have really witnessed. We've been working really hard also to amplify our reach. So it doesn't have to be only the business community. We also want to work with the government bodies, but also with the educational sector. So it's a bit of a give and gain. We try to do as much as possible, sometimes even for free, because we believe it's important. And other things whereby, hey, I need to be sustainable as well financially. I need to pay salaries. We're a team of 10. So it needs to really come down to understanding the value of what we offer. And at the moment, everything we're doing, I believe, has a value, either for youth, either for the businesses, either for the government, when it's really about values, but also impact. We're talking about plastic pollution, okay, but we also come with solutions. What is a solution to reduce plastic pollution? When we talk about food security, well, let's understand what is the problem at source and what can we do. And nowadays, we are incredibly lucky in the UAE, because it's becoming such a hub for startups and for new technologies and new companies, that you have these solutions that you can bring and introduce to bigger companies who are not aware of them. And you can also work on awareness. So these startups are so driven and believe so much in their solutions that they've actually built awareness and educational programs for corporates, for schools. So I think it's really based on partnerships. Goumbook alone would never be able to actually do anything. It's always about finding the right partners and create together something valuable that can bring change and impact to different sectors or different areas. This year, for example, we've launched in partnership with His Highness Sheikh Hamdan, the campaign Dubai Can, which helps everyone in Dubai to basically refill their reusable bottle instead of having to buy a new plastic bottle of water. And this is phenomenal. So yes, this was an idea we had 4 years ago. It took so long to launch, and we needed the support of the local authorities who understood the value to actually launch something like this. Yes, Dubai is a great destination, but Dubai can also be a great sustainable destination. How can we do this? Well, step by step. And the first step was making sure that everyone landing in Dubai, from the airport down to the beach, they were able to actually refill. Later on, as part of this sustainability initiative, Dubai Can, they looked at, plastic bags and how to, now there's a fee. It will hopefully lead to a ban. They're looking at other ways. Another campaign we launched this time in February with the Ministry of Environment was about food security. It was a campaign for students in schools and universities. It was called Foodwise. And the challenge was to present a university level solutions, technologies, ideas to solve the problem of food waste and food loss. And the solutions we had were incredible. We had an amazing panel of judges, and honestly, some judges after the challenge were actually in touch with these students to see if they could actually bring these solutions to life and as real businesses. So we can see a lot of things happening, but again, it's really partnerships and coming together.
So also, could you say there's been a shift in mentality with, say, new companies, startups, in comparison to more established companies, and also in the youngest generations in schools?
Definitely. I think in schools, it's evident that youth is now educating us, the older generations, telling us what they want, and it's fair that we give it to them for their future. I think for businesses, they understand the value of sustainability and new products and technologies. There's a very interesting aspect of larger companies looking into startups to maybe acquire them and bring them into their own portfolio, because this is also an interesting part, I think, of sustainability and development within larger companies. I would say, altogether, there's a lot that is happening in changing mindsets. COVID, for sure, has been one of the main drivers of this change. It made everyone reset a little bit and think a bit more of what is happening around us. For companies, they had to assess also where they had to, focus. For us, what we wanted from products, from our food, from our life, for our own well-being. And for youth, it's really about understanding, what am I going to do? Is there a future out there for me? And can I change it today? Can I play a role in this? The answer is yes. So I think it's very stimulating, and it's hard to answer this question because you need to look at so many different things. But definitely, there is a change of mindset. Things are evolving really quickly. If you see what's happening today, if you would have told me this 3 years ago, I would have said, no, it's not possible that this will happen. And it's happening. It's happening really, really fast. We just need a bit more push in terms of funding and in terms of regulation and policies. Sometimes you have a great idea, but you cannot implement it because the regulation is not there. Or here, it's hard to talk about subsidies. We live in a country where there's no taxes, so it's hard to then give money. But somehow the government here is very helpful, very supportive. And I think this is where there's going to be a nice work within the community and the business community to make things happen. And COP27 and 28 coming up now in the region, COP27 in Egypt and COP28 here in the UAE, in Dubai, and Dubai Expo City. I think this is, and I can see it through our work, we now get a lot of requests from corporations saying, what can we do? And this is very exciting.
So that was actually my next question. Just for the audience to know, as the Middle East will be hosting the next climate summit, COP27 and COP28. COP27 taking place the fall of this year in Egypt, and next year COP28 will, as you said, will take place here in Dubai, in the UAE. And just to follow up with what you were saying already, what are your hopes for this upcoming summits in the region?
I have big hopes. I have big hopes to see more announcements, more action. So less talk and more action. To take what to repeat what Greta Thunberg said. You know, less blah blah, but a bit more action. And I think these COPs are going to drive more action locally. I think for the UAE to decide to host COP28 here could be a big risk, and of course they don't want to take a risk. They're going to play it well, and they're going to make sure that things are going to change. They cannot afford to have all cameras and all attentions on them to just point fingers on things that don't work. So the opposite will happen. They will make sure that people will say, wow, they're taking action, they're doing this and this, things are changing. Of course, things cannot be perfect and will never be, but you can really show your strategy, your vision, how you think you're going to implement it from a government point of view, with policies and regulations. From another point of view, here we have very big companies that also want to be part of that. They don't want to be left on the side. And so that's why also it's going to be, and it is a big push for everyone to showcase what they're doing. Now, going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, we need to make sure that no one is going to use this for greenwashing and just PR. And we need to make sure that this goes beyond COP28. We need to make sure that the action continues for many, many years after that, and not only continues, but progresses. So this, for me, my big hope is that after COP28, things are going to get even better and better.
Yeah, hopefully also with this change of mentality of culture towards sustainability, probably we'll start seeing also more funding, more policy, more regulations, in general, more actions than mere words and intentions in the coming years. But also, as the challenge is accelerating, what we can do right now in the short term, since scientists are alerting of the need of taking immediate action to mitigate the effects of climate change. Tatiana, I'd love to continue speaking about this topic. Probably we could spend way more time discussing this really interesting issues. However, we already reached the 30-minute mark and we'll have to wrap up this conversation. I'd like to thank you for being here with us today in this interview and for your valuable insights on the subject. And you can follow you can follow Gulf Intelligence on Twitter and LinkedIn for more related content on sustainability and energy and renewables. And thank you, Tatiana, for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to the next one.